Welcome back, everyone. We'll convene the hearings for the annual plan. Welcome to everyone, the councillors, staff, everyone listening at home. And Tony, can I hand over to you to take us through the first subject?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, everybody. We're here for our next round of the deliberations for the draft annual plan 22-23. So yesterday we circulated 3 memos which were to deal with the 3 issues that were raised after last week's workshop, and we plan on working through each memo in turn to address any questions and get a direction from you as council. And then at the end we also would like to give you an opportunity in case there's anything you've thought about over the last week in terms of a submission that was made, and whether you want to have a look or have another chat about where council's landed on its decision. So with that, we'll get the ball rolling. We've only got 3 hours, which sounds like a long time, but may not be. So the first memo that we circulated yesterday was considering the conversation we had last week about using a rate surplus to reduce the overall rate increase for this year. So we'll take the memo as read, and we are happy to take questions.
Just basically reading the memo, it doesn't look as though the savings are there that perhaps some of the councillors thought. So, but I've got a question from Councillor Falloon.
Couple of questions, please. Basically, I accept the memo because the figures are the same that I worked out, only I worked mine out differently to come up with a surplus. However, first question is, though, coming back to subsidies and grants, it's including Wakakata, I'll say NZTA because I have problems saying that other word. NZTA subsidies, does that include the flood subsidy from the flood damage or not?
Yes, that would include the subsidy that was for flood damage, that was to carry out repairs and any renewals on roads that were very damaged in the event after the fact of being the work being done. There was a percentage paid for that.
So what we've done, we've brought the income in, presumably as an account receivable, because we wouldn't have had the cash by the end of June.
That's exactly correct. The claim for that would have gone in after the balance date, yeah, and then that would have been accrued back through because it related to the period.
Correct. So basically we have not accrued any expenditure though in the accounts, because at that stage we did not have any definitive accounts that we had to pay.
We did have some work carried out. If you'll recall, that the flood was at the end of May, and yep, there was a lot of work required straight away to get the roads back up into usable, as much as possible usable roads. So that would have been included, a part of that would have been included in that claim.
So of those...
Councillors, we're just listening to Councillor Flynn at the moment, we can't hear.
It's coming in really late, so I'm trying to find it.
Right, okay. It's on Stella if you want to look for it there.
It wasn't there last night when I was sitting there.
Right, okay. Councillor Flynn, the floor's yours.
Oh, thank you. So basically that expenditure that we paid prior to, well, we would have paid in July because it would have been accrued as at the end of June. Is that treated as CapEx or OPEX?
The majority of that would have been treated as OPEX because it was repairs rather than capital works, but there would have been a portion that's always in the final claim for NZTA. There's a final claim that's in August that gets put back through to the prior year because it relates to that time.
Yep. So on my Becky packet calculations, if we go back to the 2021 year, we spent about $11 million on roading improvements, which I imagine 51% would have been covered by NZTA subsidy.
That would be the usual way that things happen, yes.
Yep. So if we therefore look, starting with your $16.3 million. If we then take off the close enough to $6 million of NZTA money that went to subsidise our roading for the year of $11 million, that would then give me, because basically that would then give me a balance remaining of $4 million odd dollars, which therefore is offsetting against OPEX.
The 4 million that you're probably referring to would be the funding that would have been received for wastewater. There was a income received as a grant for the capital.
That was grants. I'm starting off with the total monies received from NZTA of $9,878,000. So if you take out what went to capital of 5,985, that leaves close enough to $4 million. Now, one question will answer my queries is, what is our operational expenditure on roading each year which qualifies for NZTA subsidy?
That would be a question for the roading manager or Mr. McCann.
We do have Mark there. So Mark, would you know off the top of your head?
Well, rather than looking for a defined figure, could I just put a range of figures, and does it come within that? In other words, does the expenditure on operational roading expenditure fall between $8 and $10 million a year?
We'd need to go and find that out for you.
Mark, would you know off the top of your head? Use the speaker, please.
It's very close to that, yeah. So off the top of my head, I'd have to go and research what the actual numbers are. So I could go and do that though. I'll go back to my desk and get it.
Because if we follow just through on my figures, rather than having what did I work out, a $20 million figure that we've started off with here, but if we take the OPEX out, which the OPEX grants are just offsetting expenditure on the other side, we come back to a true surplus of about $900,000.
Sorry, I was just looking at something else. Could you please repeat the question?
I couldn't do that. If we look at it, and if we say that about $4 million odd dollars comes out, or $5 million comes out to cover the operational expenditure, we therefore come down and have a very small break-even profit. In other words, the OPEX that we're receiving from NZTA offsets the expenditure, which we're showing the full amount of the expenditure in the accounts. So if you take that subsidy out, we're actually showing a profit. Only a small one.
Hamish?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The way that we looked at it, Councillor, was as per this memo, which actually took into account all the income that might be included in the P&L 20 million surplus, and that included things like development contributions, non-cash gains, vested assets, as well as the subsidies and grants, and all of which you had to take into account to understand better the $20 million. All of that led us to the conclusion that there simply is no surplus available to offset the operating expenditure of the council in the budget we're considering. So I guess I don't fully understand the pathway to your 900, but if you look at the pathway we drew, including everything, that 900 isn't obviously there.
I understand what you're saying, but to me, the whole thing comes down to the OPEX funding received from NZTA, which really offsets the expenditure which is in the other side. So
Yeah.
of that $16 million, if $5 million of that is OPEX subsidy from NZTA, then that $5 million comes off any deficit at the end.
Well, it has to be spent on the subsidised roading program.
Yeah, because
That
it
is the
has
point.
been spent and the operating expenditure has been taken into account.
Yes, so there's nothing left over for this theoretical surplus.
Well, there could be, but I mean, to me, it's probably, at the end of the day, it may not be worth doing any further work on.
No, we don't believe so either.
But, I mean, the figures that you've come up with in your memo there, I came up in those and they took me about 10 minutes to come up with the same figures. It's trying to get a breakdown of NZTA's, what's OPEX and what's CAPEX, which is the key to the whole thing.
But it doesn't generate surplus money that's available to offset rates in the following year. Regardless of how we were to calculate it, the subsidy has to be spent on the programs that are agreed with Whakatahi.
Correct, but that's part of our operational income and expenditure.
Yeah.
And that's also what we're rating for.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Thanks, John. Stuart?
Yeah, I'm not as smart as an accountant, but to me, the flooding cost us extra money. NZTA didn't reimburse us the total amount. Therefore, it must have curtailed what we were going to spend on our roads. Otherwise, we would have been in a deficit in our roading department. That's the way I understood it. We certainly didn't have a surplus in the roading department, and I'm sure we didn't get what we applied for the flooding relief. So, but I mean, that's up to Mark and Neil McCann will know more about that.
And the bulk of that, that roading will be in this financial year. There was a month, the month of June was in last financial year, but the bulk of it will be in this financial year.
That's right. And then once we get approval for the emergency repairs, to the extent that we get that approval, then we allocate that portion to match that subsidy. Any overspend, and there was, because of the work we were trying to do, has to then come out of our ordinary subsidised program.
Yep.
So,
Angus?
yeah.
Oh, sorry. Angus?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, everyone. Leaves me in a conundrum. We have the annual report, and then we usually, when that is finalised and audited and everything, I've normally seen a press release. Council looks after your money well. Not these exact words, but it means council's looked after your money well and we've made a profit. In actual fact, councillors and Mr. Mayor, we ain't made a profit at all. So we're actually hoodwinked in that book, in my opinion, the people that we represent. And I don't think it's a fair cop. So when we do the press release on our good accounting and management for this year in the annual report, can the press release please say that council has looked after your money so well that it's almost 0, 0, 0. Well done. Thank you.
Yeah, if you don't make a cash profit. But we make a profit with assets that are given to us, revaluations, which is, it's all non-cash profit.
Yeah.
Would only eventuate if you sold it, which we don't do. So the accounting is right, but it's cash is king.
And perhaps if I can just add to that, Mr. Mayor, that there's no hoodwinking. We have to prepare the annual report according to generally accepted accounting practice. So that there's no hoodwinking. There's legislation that requires us to prepare it in the manner in which we do. So that is the accounting result. That is the correct result. It's audited. So that is just a factually correct account.
Angus?
Okay, an explanation to my question before, Mr. Mayor. I don't believe I said that the annual report was wrong in any shape or form. I said something else totally different on what's caused perception out there in the community that we've made a profit. We haven't at all. So can we, my question is, can we as a council, when the annual report for the end of this year comes out, don't be so highfalutin and skiting about the profit we've made. We tell the people of Ashburton exactly what's happened and how we've managed their money very well to come to a 0-0 as close as position.
Yep.
So money's in, our money's spent.
Angus?
It's a perception I'm talking about.
Yeah, but no, we will present our result as per the requirements to present the annual report under the generally accepted accounting practice. We can't make up another set of accounts to tell a story.
Mr. Chief Executive, please, Mr. Mayor,
Angus?
I am not asking the Chief Executive to make anything up. I'm asking just to tell the truth about how it is.
We do,
And, you know,
Councillor. We do
people
now.
understand when they see a press release, council makes a profit. Oh, they overcharged me in rates is what they say. I don't want that.
So what you're asking for, a little bit more detail on
Yes.
the profit
An
that is announced
explanation.
or not.
That in actual fact, we didn't make a great big profit because we never really ever have
Well, we did.
under explanation.
The accounting term profit is a specific term, and that is exactly what we did do.
Well, I'm not an accountant, Mr. Chief Executive, and that book gives the factual information. And if you're out in the community, most times you get a different appreciation of what's actually happened in our press release that goes out to say how we've managed the people's money. That's where I'm coming from.
Okay, we'll take that on board.
I'm not disputing that book whatsoever, the annual report. With respect, I'm disputing this way in which we form the perception in the community.
Noted. Councillor Flint?
Just to comment on what Angus was saying, basically what we've got is really a mixture of capital and operating income here, in that we are getting grants which theoretically should be being used to offset assets and that sort of thing, particularly when I look at the grants we're getting for the new civic centre type of thing. They come in as income, but they're not income, and therefore don't really form part of our operating profits at all. It's not council's fault, it's bloody accounting standards' fault is the issue there. The question I have, though, is coming back to development fund contributions. Basically, we charge these as part of our fees and charges each year. When that money comes in, does that go to some sort of reserve so that the monies that people are paying, part of that is to cover the new civic centre? So does that go in to a reserve to help fund the civic centre type of thing?
Development contributions are put to a separate reserve specifically for development contributions towards various projects.
And they can only be used for what they were collected for. Yeah.
That's correct.
Erin, through this budget, we have used some accounts for reserves for offsetting rates. Do you know what we have used? I know we've used 1.7, well, we used 1.7 out of the forestry account. What other reserves have we tapped into to lower rates? Have you?
With the profits that we use to offset the rates in like property, dividends, interest and all those areas, that is indirectly using reserves because those profits never make it to the reserve. They're put straight to the rates reduction.
Yep. Thank you. So to wrap this up, yeah, the question is, do elected members wish to pursue any further rate reductions? Those who say no, or Angus?
Can we please leave that until the last question for the day? Or is that not the way you're planning it?
The other things we've got to discuss will not affect rates, I don't think. Will be all, no, I think we could do it now unless there's a will to wait. Caroline?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we all want to pursue the opportunity for rates reductions. So I think that question is moot, really. But the real question is, have we explored every opportunity for rates reductions? That is the real question. And may I ask a question?
Yep.
In the opinion of the officers, the chair, is there any other opportunity that you can see, because you've scrutinised the accounts carefully, that we can review our rates demand for the next 12 months?
Through Mr. Chair, the conclusion that we have come to is if council wishes to reduce the rates that's currently in the draft plan, you will need to reduce expenditure. So the idea of the surpluses or the reserves is a useful way of funding activity, but in the end, the way to really reduce rates is to reduce activity, and that's really for the will of the council. You've gone through the detailed budget now on many occasions. You've gone through each account. You're generally supportive of the level of activity that's in this budget, but have concerns about the overall rate increase. The way you really need to deal with that is to reduce some activity, not try and find funding mechanisms to keep the level of activity where it is, but charge less rates.
Or alternatively, through the chair, increase our income.
Yes.
That will also
Yes,
give us
absolutely.
more dollars, so their margin is greater. So have we
Absolutely.
explored all the options available to that? We have discussed in the past, and this is a bit late now, reinvesting the capital that we gain from selling Glasgow leases and things into an investment that would perhaps generate some income. And this may be an opportunity now that we can see the benefits of that, and perhaps we should start looking at that as a strategy in the future. ASAP, because we may or may not be in this position. But have we explored all the opportunities of increasing our income?
We're doing that right now with...
Okay, so we can't, I agree, may I make one more comment? I agree with Angus, we should see what else is out there, you know? Someone else around the table, like John, had a creative idea.
Fine end of doing things. We should have been doing this long before now, of increasing our income. We have lifted fees and charges right through the whole plan. The budgets have come in where the leases and rentals have been analysed and had increases applied. And our income is also for rates, and we are increasing the income by
increasing the
rates. By putting the rates up by 9.4%.
And we do have we do have strategies and policies around how we invest. So again, if the council has a desire to invest differently, we've firstly got to go back to our policies to define how it is that you want to invest. And if the returns, you'd like the returns to be higher, they'll come with commensurate risk. So you've got to approach that in a sort of a measured way.
But I think we are planning that policy is coming back to the council.
I think we have a paper coming at some stage shortly or near.
And I think this should signal to people that we should perhaps look at that carefully. Thank you.
We have been selling assets and how to reinvest those dollars into another form of asset to increase our income, and that is must be coming up soon because we asked for it some time ago. Stuart.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I thought we'd explored all this last week.
Yeah.
The submission said don't cut services. The majority said don't cut services. And I think we're prudent. We were 7.8 or something. And inflation has gone from 2 to 6%. We've got more expenditure coming up. People are wanting grants, and we were last week, the depleted council decided to hand out more money. So it was going the other way rather than saving money. I think it's a waste of time. As far as I'm concerned, we've decided on 4, is it?
Yeah.
And I'm quite happy with that. And the submissions were for virtually very, very few came in and really, really hostile about the rate increase. And as far as I'm concerned, we've gone through it thoroughly, and the only question is whether we expend a bit more in this meeting.
We haven't decided on 9.4, but we're giving an indication that it will be 9.4, and we'll make that final decision on June 30th. But there'll be strong indication from today that it probably will be 9.4, unless something drastic happens in the next couple of hours. Roger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In my opinion, reserves should only be used in an emergency. Although this is a tight period we're coming through, and it's going to be tough on some people out there, in my opinion, this is not an emergency. It's a tough period that we've got to get through. And as Councillor Wilson has said, we've analysed it, we've had advice from staff, and so that says really there isn't that many reserves there left. So I think, excuse me, I think we stick to the original plan. We'd all like it to be less than what it looks as though it's going to be, but at the end of the day we are charged with making sure the infrastructure and the operation of this district is done properly and fully to the benefit of all people. So, yeah, thank you.
On that note, I think the answer is no further rate reductions can be achieved. We've done. So next subject, Tony.
Okay, thank you very much. Next subject we've got up is the memo regarding the Rakaia Recreation Centre request. I might get Janice to come forward. She's done the bulk of the work on this paper.
Welcome, Janice.
Janice, you just go there.
Thank you. Thank you. Through the chair, I'll just take it as having been read, and if you have any questions, please, I'll take them.
Councillors, questions? I wasn't here the other day when this was debated, but you obviously decided to make some monies available for the toilets which need replacing, or will be demolished and need replacing, which is great. They've also asked for a $200,000 loan. Looking at the paper, they were asking interest-free, but just reading here that perhaps we could make the loan available to them for seed funding and cash flow purposes, and charge a interest rate that is reasonably fair, is my thoughts. Angus.
Just a clarification, Mr. Mayor. The Rakaia Rugby Club has presented everything to date and is doing all the asking and obviously the project coordinating and everything. So in this first line it says concept for recreational centre at the Rakaia domain. So will this centre be under the control of and owned by the Rakaia Rugby Club, or will it be known as a recreational centre in the Rakaia domain?
My reading of it is the Rakaia Recreational Centre, but is being spearheaded by the Rakaia Rugby Club. And with my talkings to them, it is available for other members of the community to use. Yeah, answer your question, Councillor?
Yes, I think your thinking is the same way as mine.
The other point
it's
I had was
actually a
who owns
community
it.
project being organised by the rugby club.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the ownership of it, because it's on council land,
And will be.
if in the event of the club going into whatever they go into, the asset is the council's, because it's on council land.
The people of this
The
district.
people of the district.
Thank you.
John?
Unfortunately, if they go into liquidation, it becomes another vested asset, and we have to pick up the repairs and maintenance on whatever the stage of that is. The comment I'd wish to make, though, is that I have no problem about loaning them $200,000, but I would like to see an interest rate which has some incentive for them to repay that. So my thoughts would be that you could loan them $200,000 for the first 12 months interest-free, while they get their feet under the table. Then after that, we give them a loan at an increasing interest rate, maybe 1% per year going up or something like that from a base rate that we start with, and that then gives them an incentive to get that loan repaid ASAP.
Or you leave the interest rate at a reasonable rate and ask for some principal to be repaid over the term of the loan. Yeah, correct.
Mr Mayor, the work that we have done does include a table mortgage approach. And the reason that we didn't make the first year interest-free is that interest then is a cost to every other ratepayer, and suddenly your 9.4 is impacted. So we assumed that this should be neutral for other ratepayers, and that the seeding money, if you like, was going to be useful. We do know from the presentations from the representatives at Rakaia that they hope either not to need this loan, or indeed, if they do need it, they may be able to repay it really quickly when other funding becomes available to them. So on that basis, we felt it was appropriate to have a table mortgage. I think the work that we've done, that Janice showed me this morning, is 200 points above OCR or something similar. So there's a little bit of an incentive for them to get rid of it as soon as possible, and that it's not a cost to any other ratepayer, but gets the project underway if they need that seeding fund.
There's also a comment in here, forget Liz, does it set a precedent? Well, great if it does. The community getting out and developing projects for themselves, and if we need to give them some seed funding, well, excellent. It's not a gift, it's a loan. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, and just following on from what Hamish mentioned, because my question was around what other funding have they received to date, and then maybe that should read as provide up to $200,000 loan if needed, because it sounds like if they do receive funding, they may not need it, and I think that would probably be the better idea.
Yep, that sounds like a good amend to that. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I totally agree. I think it should be pretty much nearly a commercial loan rate, perhaps a little bit subsidised, whatever is the best recommendation, and I think it should have some capital being repaid. But I think in our reports it noted that could set a precedent was a negative thing. I actually think it's a very positive thing, because if people are taking charge of their environment and want to invest in their community, I think it's a marvellous thing.
Correct.
And I think we should, as per the Chief Executive, we shouldn't expose our ratepayers to more potential liability at this stage. So I think, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Lovett.
I'd have to be totally against a commercial rate. I think this is beneficial to the community, and they need places out there for their youth, for their development, and I think this is a great asset to that community. They're all behind it, working hard to pay for it, and we need to be there supporting them and helping them along this journey, and I'd hate to see them punished on commercial rates. That's not what we're about. And it's not setting a precedent, because we help other communities with on reserve boards and things, and yeah, I just think it's a great project, and we need to.
So you'd be happy for the words of favourable interest rate?
Yes, favourable interest rates. Right. Absolutely.
Yep. Councillor Latham.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I'm in favour of this too, but I can't agree with Councillor Lovett that it should not be a commercial rate. This is another responsibility of council. We are charged with making sure that the district operates efficiently and fairly, and also, I believe, to give people a hand up occasionally when they need it, and that's all we're doing. We are making some funds available so that they can get on and get their operation underway. So I'm certainly in favour of it, and it should be as commercial as possible, because it's ratepayers' money. It's our ratepayers are actually giving it to the rugby or to the Rakaia Recreation Centre. It's not the council So I think to protect the ratepayers, we should be as commercial as we possibly can.
Being commercially as possibly can and favourable, are they very similar terms? Councillor Falloon.
Council, by what Hamish said before, had talked about a table mortgage. Over what length of term?
So the work that we did, and that included what might be reasonable levels of repayment given their operation. So we, broadly speaking, looked at our understanding of a surplus that they've made of around 30,000 per annum in previous years. We halved that because some years are not as good as others, and said perhaps you can contribute about 15 grand to repay this mortgage, and so we reverse engineered it in effect. So it became a 20-year table mortgage at a whatever interest rate we picked, I think around about 5.7%. And so if they borrowed the full 200 and were never able to pay it back early, they'd be paying us back around about $16,000 per annum for the next 20 years, and then that would extinguish the loan.
I think that is an excellent solution to the issue. Basically, we are getting more than adequate return on the money that we're borrowing for it. There is an incentive for them to repay sooner rather than later. I fully support that.
Right, Caroline?
Totally support that.
Okay,
Yep.
Diane?
Yes, I support it too, and I think it's council's doing the right thing by showing support to a group that's got the initiative to get off their butt, so to speak, and do something for themselves without just putting their hand out and expecting to get it for free. So I do support what's been discussed, but I do think that they need to be at that, like Hamish said, the commercial rate.
I'm going to put it, wrap it up. So we're going to lend up to $200,000, up to, on a table mortgage over 20 years? 20 years. Now, we've got I think the thing we're just differing on is favourable or commercial rates. And I might get a show of hands who wants a favourable interest rate.
Favourable to who?
Favourable to the rugby club.
So what does that include? Hamish's suggestion of 5.7. What can we be
I think yours was commercial, was it?
The 5.7 seemed to us to be fair, and cover council and a little bit above. So that, I guess in terms of this debate, the 5.7 felt like a more commercial approach than favourable.
So it wouldn't be costing council.
Yeah.
Yeah. Favourably, favourable, I think, would be what we can borrow the money at, plus a margin for doing the paperwork.
Can we have some more? Can we be a bit more specific and a bit tighter around that, please, before we vote? Like commercial now, if you go out to the bank now, you get over 6%, don't you, to buy a house? What are we borrowing that money for if we loan it next week? What I think we just can't say. We need to know what we're doing.
Well, every week or every month, every year will be different.
So we're going to ask for a 1.5% margin on what we borrow the money for. Is that favourable?
It was a 2% margin above the OCR. That's how we got to 5.7.
Reasonable to me, yeah.
And I don't know if that's, in the context of this discussion, is whether that falls into the commercial.
Neither do we.
Or the favourable, but that's what we did to calculate the ability to pay based on their previous surpluses.
So we set it now at 2% above OCR. Okay, great. Done, thank you. Next item is footpaths.
It is, thank you. We just might need a quick 2-minute interlude, some background music just while we get the new presentation up from Mark.
Right, if we'll just have a 2-minute interlude. Welcome, Mark. Tony, got a presentation on the footpaths.
Yep, thank you. The memo covers most of what we're talking about in terms of footpaths and finding funding for doing new footpaths. So, but I wrote a presentation as well just to give a bit more detail to it, but then we can have a good discussion. But hopefully some stuff in the presentation will give some more information and a bit more background. So the main thing, low cost, low risk funding that we had, that was the main item within subsidised roading, in terms of where we didn't get the funding we wanted. And so the eligible projects on that, that's to do with school frontages, intersection improvements and what have you. And there's 3 activities in that low cost, low risk funding. And this is Waka Kotahi's activity, so we have to comply with that and apply for it for these different categories. So road to zero, local road improvements and walking and cycling. And the walking and cycling is where the new footpaths sat. So in terms of low cost, so those 3 activities, that's what we requested and what we've got approved for the 3 years. And so an overall total 11 million, and we got 50% of that. Of that, the walking and cycling is that one there, that includes our new footpath. So we requested 1.1 and we got $200,000 approved. So that means that we didn't have the money to do those new footpaths. And when you look in the budgets that are there, that's why there's a 0 amount there for 22-23, because we haven't got the funding there for it. So we've been, so in summary, we got 50% of what we requested overall, just for low cost, low risk. Or out of the maintenance and operations and renewals, we got pretty much everything that we asked for on that. It was just in this one where we got a bit less.
Mark, could I just hold you there? And these figures are for a 3-year period?
Yeah, these ones here.
3-year period.
Yeah.
John, have you had a question there beforehand? Or?
Yeah, I have actually. What does road to zero projects mean?
Well, that's safety projects to head towards having 0 deaths on our roads is what the aim is. Obviously, that's something that is a longer discussion than just footpaths, but road to zero. So it's safety improvements, as well as local road improvements. There's a bit of a crossover for that. It's road safety promotion as well, so it's education as well as some projects and isolated. Yeah, so it covers a lot of things.
You'll have seen the advertisements on the TV at the moment, Road to Zero.
Yeah.
And it's Road to Zero by 2030 or 2050, is it? It's government. It ends Waka Kotahi doing it.
Yeah, so reduction by 40% by 2030.
It's the,
which I think we all want. It's how we can get there is the big issue. But Road to Zero includes road safety promotion and the stuff that a road safety coordinator does and things like that. So in terms of getting that message out there. We've also got unsubsidised road improvements for 22-23 and in 23-24, so it's 1.253. So that's for like seal widening that you can't get subsidy for, so that council pays the full cost. This is so the spreadsheet you're going to find. These are out of that, and so if you look at the whole spreadsheet that you've got in front of you, I'd say there might be a question about the different colours on it. The grey ones at the top is what's completed or deferred, so we're not doing. So that includes the CBD. The green ones are the routine everyday improvements like general drainage improvements and flag lights and things like that we don't have specific sites for, but when they come up we want to be able to do them. The next section, the white one, is new footpaths and curb and channel, which is their focus for today. And the order of these, the next one's rural and the last one's urban safety. The order of these is, after discussion with the team, they prioritised them and put it in that order based on what they thought was the need, how long they've been around, and the ability to do them, things like that. That's how that priority got there. The discussion we had today is we haven't got any problem with adding other ones to that if you want to add it, or change the order of them, but this is the priority that the team have come up with based on their knowledge of the network, the requests and that sort of thing. So just in summary, if you look on the screen for the presentation, this is what we're proposing for new footpaths under the 2 different categories of funding. So in low cost, low risk, we have got $200,000 approved. So I thought we'll use that, but also use a portion of our unsubsidised funding for doing new footpaths. So that's what's proposed for 22-23 and 23-24. It's all from unsubsidised because our low cost, low risk funding will already be spent by then. Follow on. Again, this is from the spreadsheet you've got. These are future new footpath projects. Now, the 2 that I've highlighted is just one, Racecourse Road, and I know there's particular interest for Racecourse Road, that's for doing the full curve and channel and footpath there. And so we can have a discussion on whether we want to do, there's a reason why it's delayed until 25, 26, is that the undergrounding of the power. And it doesn't make much sense to put curve and channel and footpath down there with the power pole still there and then come back in 3 years' time and take them down. But if what you want to do is, for example, on Racecourse Road, put down the base course for the footpath and just leave it at that so it can be used, and most of that will remain in place and won't get damaged the same as a curb and channel seal footpath will. So that's an option as well that we can discuss further. And Albert Street is the connection down to the Christian school, so that's been requested as well. And it's quite a long distance, and it just hasn't been given as high a priority as some others, but it's been requested and it's been there for a couple of years as well. So the basis of these projects is from 2 years ago when we first put in for the low cost, low risk funding. So this is the total spreadsheet of projects there. There haven't been many added to it, but there can be, and there probably needs to be based on discussions already had, like Allen's Road and Carter's Terrace and Farm Road and things like that.
Carter's Road, you mean?
Carter's Road, sorry, yeah.
Liz, your question on that?
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a question on the notes that were sent through, and it just shows in the draft annual plan you've got new footpaths for Ashburton, Rakaia and Rural, but you don't have Mackie Street in there for Methven. So I was just wondering, has that been left out? I can see it's top of the list on your white
Andrew?
on the white section there, and it's scheduled in for the next financial year, but you've also got it down under the bottom there's about the stormwater, so I'm guessing that that's just an extra bit of work if there was funding available. Have I got that right, or have I missed something?
Thank you, through the chair. No, you certainly haven't missed anything, Councillor McMillan. What we've got there is the excerpt that we've cut out of the draft at the time when we prepared it before we went out for consultation. And at that stage, we knew we didn't have all the LCLR funding that we needed, but we hadn't had the conversation with council around the priority of what was going to be in and what was going to be out. So we took a prudent approach, and possibly a confusing approach, to be fair, and showed it as zero with the intention there was always going to be money spent, but we needed to have that conversation to establish what was going to be spent, where and when. So that's will be updated in the final draft, in the final plan for you to adopt at the end of June, following this conversation today.
Are any of the projects which we are thinking of doing, they're also stormwater related?
Well, there's curb and channel and footpath on the side, then it becomes stormwater, but drainage improvements covers any stormwater things as terms of overall routine ones that haven't got specific sites, but when they come up we can do them. So if they're putting a footpath in and needs curb and channel as well, then the curb and channel is the stormwater part of that, but it's come under low cost, low risk.
So if we're doing stormwater stuff, how are we paying for that? Is it out of just rates?
I'm not sure what you're asking. If, for example, you're talking about Allen's Road and want to put a footpath in and have to deal with the stormwater part of it, then that'll have to be part of that project.
I'm just thinking stormwater is a three water, and perhaps, hopefully not, but we may lose it. And any three waters work we're doing, we are loan funding it because the gift of the loan will go with it if it goes. So there's my point. Yeah, not rate funding for something that we may not own or manage in the future.
Yeah, I'm still not sure how that demarcation between currently the stormwater network in terms of between roading and three waters is the curb and channel and sump and the outlet is covered by roading, and then after that the treatment is covered by stormwater. So how that is dealt with in the future, that's still got to be discussed and confirmed. There's quite a bit of work to do in that area, so where that cut-off is.
Yeah, okay. Angus?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is, am I correct in this statement or this thoughts? Councillors, I have a smile on my face and I have my tongue tucked into my cheek, but you can't see it underneath the mask. I actually give credit, because this is the third excuse I've seen for Racecourse Road, and do you know, councillors, it's the best one I've seen yet.
You certainly won't be thanked for putting a footpath down and then a couple of years later be all ripped up and put a underground power cable in. You will not be thanked for that, and I think you've taken the right approach by delaying it till such a time that that the power cable goes in first. If you put the gravel down the side of the road as you suggest, what's the likely cost of that?
$50 to $60 a metre, something like that, as opposed to 90 or 100 when you do the full footpath.
So it's about half it.
Yeah, but there's no curb and channel as part of it. It'll just be the base course going down. There's a similar option for the footpath in Methven to go to the thermal pools. It's about $30 a metre, $60 a metre.
So if you spent your $50, $60 a metre, and then in 3 years' time, you'd spend $90 a metre on top of your 50 or 60 to replace it.
Well, it'll be less when you come back because the base course majority will actually remain there. So we'll make sure we put it in place so it can be reused, and just the damage where the poles are taking out is the only place you have to redo it again. So that's the idea anyway. It'll reduce the cost in the future. Yeah.
I bet it doesn't.
Yeah.
Liz.
Thank you. And I'm just going to go back to that Mackie Street again, because I know it's one that has come up in the Methven Community Board, commented on it last time they were here, but it's something that, so it's definitely in the budget for next financial year, but not with the added extras to stop that sort of stormwater flow.
Yes, it is. The shape of the footpath, when we do Mackie Street, will deal with that at the same time. So that's all part of that project, yeah. I just want to clarify as well, new footpaths Ashburton require Methven rural are all zero budgets there. What we're proposing is it's all covered under the unsubsidised roading. So it's not separated out. We'll be doing unsubsidised projects. I've just got some on the screen there now. And including seal widening and seal backs and things like that. So the spreadsheet covers the whole range of projects that we're proposing to do, some under low cost, low risk, some under unsubsidised, and you can see the two activity fields in the spreadsheet changes from one to the other. They were originally under local road improvements, now some are being done under unsubsidised. So that's what our proposal is, in terms of don't need extra funding to do new footpaths, even though not in the budget. They've done an unsubsidised roading and choosing to spend some of that rather than some other projects.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned the path or the track up to the hot pools. Would that be included in this, or how?
Well, it's not currently in there.
No.
But if there's a desire by council to, and the estimated cost is about $30,000 to do that as well, it needs a bit more work in terms of trimming trees and things like that and getting the parties together, but we do need to take that step. If we want to include that as well, we can do that. Just means other one has to drop off the bottom, and I suggested it won't be Mackie Street that'll drop off. So
thank you. And I'd just like to say that I think it will be good to put it in there. We've tried to get the speed lowered, and we've got Waka Kotahi coming in today. And I don't know whether it's another question. We presented that petition last time we were here, and I know, Mark, you've said in the past that a footpath would probably happen quicker than the speed lowering. So I think it's essential to get it in there.
Okay, just seal widening, Mark.
Yes.
Is that just adding a little bit on the edge, or is that redoing the whole road, making it wider?
Seal widening is just widening the carriageway that's there. When we do a rehab, we do the widening as part of the rehab when we're doing it, but some sections of the road will just be a seal widening, like Mayfield Valletta. So there's a couple of sections there we want to do seal widening on. There's also a couple of sections we want to do rehab on as well. So it just depends on how many faults are in at the time, but seal widening is just widening the seal, which can be problematic. Ideally, you want to do an overlay and a widening as well, because if you just do a widening, you've actually essentially got a better pavement on the edges than you have on the old existing pavement. Doing an overlay at the same time is a better way of doing it. It just costs a lot more. So it's just a bit of a balancing act, and this is the team have come up with the list of roads that they want to do, or they think is the best option for them.
Yeah. I see you got Thompson's Track down seal widening.
Yeah.
Thompson's Track is rehabilitation. That road is knackered. In serious.
It's a bit of both, yeah.
Yeah, seal widening, I think you'd be wasting your money seal widening. It should be spent on doing it. An example of seal widening, many years ago, Seafield Road to Hansco was widened, and now look at it. You're ready to go in and do it, well, you've already done it. a complete rehabilitation, which should have been done the first time.
Yeah, it depends how much money you've got available at the time, and having been through the same thing and so on, it's the same thing, but there was only money available at the time to do the seal binding, then reseals, and then 10 years later it needs a rehab as well, so yeah, I understand the issues.
I think just do it once, do it right.
Yeah.
Diane.
Thank you. Really pleased to see, Mark, that you mentioned my idea of the gritting on that track on Racecourse Road. And despite work to be done in 3 years, I think there's so many people on that road. Where does the safety of humans come into it? We don't want to lose a life in those next 3 or 4 years at all. Allen's Road, I'm struggling with Allen's Road. I'm always going up there looking at it and all the new development, and with the high density housing that's going in on both sides of Allen's Road, on the north side of Mill Creek. The DCs, do they get, I know we talked about DCs before, but where's the contribution from the developer to the potential footpathing of those roads? I mean, it's such a narrow street, so much has happened on it, it's got big swales on it. I think we're going to have a huge problem putting a footpath in there. I hope we can find a way, but I just struggle with the forward planning of on that street as to how it's got to where it is.
Tend to agree. Ideally, it's a condition of the consent at the time. If it's having an effect on the road, that the frontage gets upgraded at the same time. It hasn't happened there, so therefore it'll have to be funded as a project further on. So ideally done at the time by the developer at their cost. And I agree, it is problematic to put a footpath down there now the way the roadside is. Haven't had much say in that, and we'll just have to deal with that when we kind of, but if we want to have a footpath down there, we have to do a bit more work on the survey, and we'll have to do that anyway, because it will need a footpath eventually, whether it's next year or the year after, or whenever. We have to work out how we can fit around what's already there. Yeah.
Thank you. It might come at great cost.
It will come at a cost, yeah.
Anyway, my most important one is Racecourse Road.
Councillor Lovett.
I was just going to say, I think it's a great idea, the Scrabble tracking. Do we need to borrow into the forestry reserves to do Racecourse Road and Albert Street and perhaps Allen's Road do the tracks? I think it's a great compromise in the meantime.
No, we don't.
So do we need a loan fund?
We resolved that we're not taking any more reserves there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that'll have to be loan funded. But these are important.
No, it's not loan funded, it's at a rates, isn't it not?
At a rates.
Yeah, low cost, low risk.
Low cost and our unsubsidised roading that we've got there anyway to do projects like seal widening and now footpaths. If it's not going to get funded under low cost, low risk, and we want to do them, what we're proposing is, what you're putting forward is, from our point of view, if you want to do them, this is the way you can do it with the money we've already got. You don't have to raise any more, increase rates, or this is funding that's already there. So it just means that not all projects that you want to do will necessarily get done over the next 2 years. But these are the projects that have been there, we're prioritising, but no problem with councillors wanting to add other ones in there, and we can just drop one off and then they'll just have to wait another year. So that's the discussion. It's not about whether the funding is there for it. It is there for it. So.
I think the gravel tracking is a great idea, and I think Racecourse Road has got to be top priority because it's over 5 years they've been asking for this and it's become a safety issue. So I think we've got to push on with that, and even Albert Street, the gravel tracking down there, I just think that's a great opportunity to get something there. The kids aren't in the mud.
They haven't asked for gravel tracks, they asked for asphalted footpaths, and we're going to deliver them something, perhaps deliver them something else, which is not what they wanted. I'm not in favour of delivering anything until the works line up.
Tend to agree. It's an option for Racecourse Road because of what's going to happen, but if you want to put a footpath down Albert Street, down to the Christian school, we should put a full seal footpath down to, if you want to do it. I mean, it's quite a big cost, but it's one that's there. Our view is staff, there's other projects that should be done probably before that, given the school being located there and knowing the location when they set up there, things like that.
I think we should take your advice. Yeah. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I can't see why racecourse people are more valuable than anybody else around town. They're pretty chirpy. There's lots of other roads with exactly the same, just a narrow sealed road with no footpath and the broken seal on the edge of the road, narrow seal road, and people are expected to walk and bike and everything on that. I don't agree with the Mayor with seal widening. They seal widened Winslow Road, and I'm not sure who did it, whether it was Fulton Hogan or ACL, but you wouldn't know that it hasn't been a proper laid road. You laid it properly and compact each side. It's turned out really, really well. I mean, there's no tracking, so if it's done properly, it can be, because it was narrow seal. It wasn't just a bit on the side, it was a complete, it'll be 1 metre or 2 each side, so it does work. The other question is, all these prices in here, Mark, we've already got money to cover that in our unsubsidised and subsidised low risk roading. This is what the program is as far as you're concerned at the moment.
This is the proposed program with the funding we've got available.
Thank you. Yep.
But the funding won't change, but some of the projects can change if you wish to change them. So.
Yeah, Stuart, the road I was talking about as an example was the ones on the outside was fine. It was the bit in the middle that wasn't touched that all broke up in Seafield Road after years of being done, which is now getting the full rehab if it hasn't been done. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. One comment, I certainly support Mackie Street and the footpath up to the hot pools. I think that we have a tremendous asset in our community with the hot pools, and we need to make sure that it can be utilised safely and effectively, and we do our bit to beautify the region. But my question, through the chair, is with regards to these base course footpaths, are we going to maintain them if do they get potholes given they've got no waterproofing on the top, or how does that work with bikes and wheelchairs and stuff?
They tend to require little maintenance in that it's not like a road with traffic on it, it's a footpath. Graham's Road down to Lake Hood, for example.
Yeah.
That's been there and requires little maintenance. You more got to do weed spraying than you have to worry about potholes on it. But if they do need work, we will do it under footpath maintenance. Yeah.
Okay. So we would do the weed spraying if we went ahead with it. Yep. I mean, that's a very busy road down there now with lots of development. Racecourse Road, there's a lot of building. Will trucks and things going, accessing their sections and that damage the base course?
You shouldn't have trucks.
No. People that are driving into.
If there's entrance ways, we'll construct them so that they construct this entrance ways. So
what was that, sorry?
If there's vehicle access into the properties, they won't be driving that far over to get onto the footpath.
Oh, no,
but only access to the properties.
Yeah.
We'll construct them so they can drive across them.
Okay, so. I disagree with Councillor Wilson. I agree there are other streets in the town that need repairing and other roads in the district, but we can only do one at a time. We can only do what we can do, and I think Racecourse Road has got a lot of traffic in that. Even though we've got speed limits of 50k and then 60k, people speed down there. There's a lot of roadworks down there at the moment. And I'm also like to make another comment how disappointed I am with what I hear with regards to Allen's Road. That is going to be difficult to seal, and the inference being that we don't have the developers. It's not upon them to fix the verge. Do I understand that correctly from that discussion?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's major.
So
it's a major project to fix it.
Beg your pardon?
It's a major project to put a footpath down there, reading this memo.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll do some work on it and see what it costs and what we have to do with the stormwater, because if you're going to footpath there, there's a couple of sections you can't have the swale the size it is there.
No, it's massive. I don't know where because people walk down there now and they're walking on the side of the road. Thanks.
Liz has got to leave in a few minutes, so we talked about Methven, down to the hot pools and the Mackie Street. Can we confirm that we'll do those before Liz goes? Yep, done. Right, it's fine. So, Lane.
No, thank you, Mark. I think you've got it right. As we talked before, there's no use putting new footpaths and everything else in if there's still a lot of activity with building and everything else. And my problem is still that the town is growing quicker than we can follow it. And it happens on places we never thought. So people might like to have all the fancy things straight away. It doesn't work. Allen's Road has always been a real small and a quiet road. Now it's quite busy with trucks and bits and pieces. But like Stuart said before, really, they can walk on footpaths, not exactly on the Racecourse Road, but there is a lot of footpaths that go the other ways. So saying that they don't have any footpaths, really?
people do walk on grass berms and run on grass berms. Just when it's wet and the wrong time of year, then it's not as easy to do,
Just thinking, Trevor's Road development, there's development down there, which is off Trevor's Road. Will that be getting a footpath and curb and channel courtesy of the developer or not?
No. Yes.
It will.
As I understand it,
Right. Thank you. Roger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are thousands and thousands of kilometres out there with no footpaths and people still walk on them. I agree with Councillor Brahm. Our development sometimes gets ahead of the capability of the council to support it in a way. And I've lived in that area and walked around that area for 30 years. You just step into the grass if there's a car coming. We've all been taught how to face oncoming traffic and get off the road if there's a car coming. So although it would be wonderful to have those the roads with a good footpath, I think it's in the program, in the long-term program here, and I think we've got it about right. So we're just going to have to be patient and get there eventually.
I think you're right. We stick to the program because when they purchased their houses there was no footpath. There was no expectation there'd be a footpath. They were not giving them a disillusion of something that they were promised and not getting. They knew what they had when they purchased. Councillor Mackay.
Mr Mayor, I'm very pleased to hear that there's going to be a footpath courtesy of the developers on Trevor's Road. I think that's tremendous. So it leads me to the question of, on this section of Racecourse Road we're talking, how many more developments can be held there, or is it fully developed?
The development is more on Carter's Road, is what the when the sewer pipe goes up Carter's Road, which should be shortly. There's be a lot of development up there, not on Racecourse Road, as I believe. Not on Racecourse Road.
Mr Mayor, I am not disagreeing with you. I'm quite simply asking how much more development can be had on this section and this side of the road on Racecourse Road that we're talking about.
I'm sure.
Certainly don't answer from a roading point of view. Just looking at townships and how they grow, it's hard to see where growth is going to end up, and people develop land that think, oh, I haven't got that zone for land for development, but it ends up happening anyway with the demand. So, yeah.
Joe?
Certainly haven't got an answer for it.
Joe?
The development on Racecourse Road, to the best of my knowledge, will continue on the left-hand side right up to Farm Road if you're travelling towards Methven.
It's residential C.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course you've got the residential D blocks being developed on the northern side of the road.
On the other side of the road.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. May I re-ask my question?
Yes.
In a different way?
Try.
Yeah. So the wee stretch of road that we're talking about up to Allen's Road, on the left, heading towards the hills, how much more development can take place there today? Sorry?
Yeah, I don't think we know that. Someone would have to go away and look. If you want someone to have a look at that and come back.
Well, why I'm asking is that we thought that we had in other conversations about this, that it was almost fully done on that side of the road, and yet there's been no footpath put in. So something has gone wrong somewhere, and that's why I said it was great that Trevor's Road is going to be done, because this wee stretch seems to be fully developed when you drive along and look in, and yet there's no footpath. And there's even no footpath round the corner of the house that is actually part of a development that's already been done. So I think my question is justified, but I can't seem to get an answer.
I think we had
but I have had answers in the past which tell me that this bit is fully done and thus will require some sort of a footpath.
I think we got the answer last time from Jane that there was some work being developed, is it?
Oh, that was kind of a slightly different issue, but to answer Councillor Mackay's question, yes, that block is pretty much fully developed. What makes it different when you look at Trevor's Road is with Trevor's Road, that's subject to an outline development plan within the district plan, and it's much easier to manage these subdivisions where it's just one developer and one big chunk of land, like Braybrook, like a whole lot of other examples you could think of, Camrose, etc., that are subject to outline development plans. But when you've got ad hoc development with all different property owners, they happen at different times and you end up with gaps in between them, and that's where you end up with a bit of a mess. It's much more difficult to manage than one developer developing a big block of land. The piece of work I referred to the other day was just that going forward, we are going to come up with a code of practice for subdivision which will specify the standards and requirements for subdivisions.
Right. Mark, how many more slides have you got? Because of course there's a lot of lights on for questions which may be answered with more going forward. Again, I'm thinking there's a cup of tea brewing as well.
Yeah, there aren't too many. I just had some maps that we've got in there in terms of all footpaths that we've got identified. So Ashburn, Timwald, Rakaia, there's a lot identified in there to do over the next few years. Working on those, Methven as well, and the one to the thermal pools is in there and it's been added in there, but it's not in the list anywhere. But I understand that's one we want to do. So and it makes sense to do as well. Without not doing Mackie Street, that's definitely going to get done. So. And then there's one covers by the rural ones as well, Mayfield. There aren't too many in these. There's a few in Hines identified in the future as well as links. And Fearton, oddly enough, and Chertsey. Oh, sorry. I added a couple of extra slides at the end to do with $1.7 million, but it's not for the discussion today, unless you want to see those as well. So there's only a couple of slides.
Save them for the activity reports.
Okay. Yeah.
Should we council break now for a cup of tea and come back and finish the conversation? Adjourn? Now, ready to go. Welcome back for your cup of tea, councillors and stuff. And Caroline, floor yours.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this issue. Mark, through the chair, it's nothing to do, I don't have a question, but I have a remark to you really, Mr Mayor. You mentioned earlier people knew when they bought their properties on Racecourse Road that there was no footpath. I think it's incumbent upon us to have a budget and a business that's flexible and has an ability to react to change and alter and move as the town grows and changes. So I don't think that's really reasonable to blame the residents of Racecourse Road that we're not going to support them in their need for a footpath because they should have known there wasn't one. And that's the point I wanted to make.
That wasn't really my point. My point, and it's not just Racecourse Road, it is everywhere. And I get the same comments, questions on someone who lives on a shingle road in a rural area. They want their road tar sealed. And when they purchased their property there, they knew that it was a shingle road. And the same as Racecourse Road or any other road, they knew there was no footpath there. An expectation that they'll be there one day and the road will be sealed, yes. When? Don't know. It's all budget related. So that was more my point rather than pointing at people on Racecourse Road.
Thank you.
And Lynette.
I've actually got two questions here now. Sealing of rural roads. Years ago we had a criteria of so many houses and then on a road and then it was considered to get sealed. That's how we got Dawson's Road done. Does that still apply or how does that come about?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there's any funding for seal extensions. I guess if council wanted to do it, then we have to come up with a criteria for it. But it's not something that I'm aware of. And come from Selwyn, it's a similar thing. You had a policy there. It was actually quite tough to actually meet the criteria though in terms of traffic volume and whether you can get subsidy for doing the seal extension or not. So I have to do some research now.
Yeah, that was
there was a policy probably 10 years or more, but then NZTA changed their criteria and it had to meet a business case and vehicle movements was a big indicator of whether it would get there. And the roading manager at the time says a lot of our sealed roads don't even meet the number of vehicles for a road to be sealed, let alone the unsealed road network. But if you did the research, you'll see that.
It would just be similar, and to get the benefit cost ratio high enough to get subsidy for it, and that was the only time the council would do it, was you had to have sort of over 300 vehicles a day on an unsealed road. Well, we don't have any of those, I don't think so.
What we have offered in the past is the council puts in its 50% and the property owner puts in the 50%. Been used a little bit, but not much at all. Councillor Love?
Right, I'm just going back to the second comments here about Racecourse Road. This has been on the card since my first term in council. We had a delegation come in here and a petition on that road at that stage, and they kind of were led to believe that when the infill housing happened between, is it Allen's Road and that they would get a footpath of some, down that section. And I even think now a grit track would serve the purpose going forward. And to me, it should be on the top of the list because, this is about 4 or 5 years ago they came in. They've been coming back at us about this again. And if it's not going to get a footpath down for another few years, it's going to be 10 years before they see a path of some description down there, and I don't think it's really fair. And then they sit there and they'll look at that. Here's new hot pools at a method just being built, and we're talking about a gritted path down there. And Racecourse Road carries a lot of traffic with all this development, heavy trucks and everybody trying to walk on the road and jump off, and kids on bikes. I just don't think it's fair. These guys have been waiting for years for something, and I think we need to get a track down there of some description in the meantime. It should be high priority to me.
Thank you, Lynette. Stuart?
Yes, good. You put the picture of Racecourse Road up again, please, Mark. What distance actually is it? I thought they were going to connect from the gateway to Lockley to the corner. That's about, how long is it, about 100 metres?
Yes, a bit more than that, but yeah, it is from Charlesworth to Allens Road, so that connection through there. There's already footpath and Curvin Channel up to Charlesworth, then after that to Allens Road, so, yeah.
The 300 metres that over a gravel track, what would that cost be?
It's about $60 a metre, so, yeah.
180,000.
No, it's not that much.
18,000.
80, yeah.
Yeah.
I had another question.
All in order. Stuart.
No, slipped my mind, it must be.
Next up is John.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question, the new subdivision going in down Graham's Road in Tynwald, are they providing footpaths?
Already there.
Joe?
Oh, yes, they are on the frontage, I think, Jane, aren't they?
Sorry, is that the Ashbury Grove subdivision? Yes, as far as I know, they are definitely providing a footpath.
Yeah, that's what it was. Should we point out to new subdividers whether it's B, or C or D? If you're going to set up a big subdivision, your clients are going to want footpath access to the rest of town, and have we got any rights, Jane, to say, look, they're going to come to the council in due course, and we say to the developer it should be part of it, so that it makes it a lot easier for us.
Mark might be a better placed to answer this than me, but I don't think you can require somebody to provide a footpath that goes beyond their own development. I'm not sure what legal power we would have to require that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. My view is, though, in the Local Government Act, it allows you to take funding. If the development has an effect on the traffic and road, it's not just saying, oh, we want to connect up the footpath there, but if it has an effect on what's happening on the road, then you have to mitigate that. And whether it's a contribution or by the developer or they pay the full cost, that's something that needs to be part of the consent discussion. And I do get invited to pre-application meetings and with the development engineers and water services as well. So we talk about that and say we can put a condition on it. And it needs to be agreed and needs to be appropriate. And if you can make a case on why it should happen, then that's what we should do. You're not able to say, on a racecourse road, if there's a subdivision another kilometre down the road and you want to do the connection, that the developer has to pay that. But you can assess the effect that the development has on the road and the road users and that sort of thing. So there's the power to do it, but it's not just you have to do it. It's sort of normally agreed, and the developer wants to do it because it might actually be a benefit to the development in the long run. You can do it. So there's a bit of work needed on that. I know they're talking with the new development engineer. She's got a few views on that as well. So something to keep working through.
Diane?
Thank you, and I just raised the very topic in the tea room with the Mayor. As Ashbury Grove, I can see that the people who will build near the Graham's Road end, there's that 50 odd metres from the entrance to Grove Street, and all their kids are going to want to go up the street to school, straight up Graham's Road. So that's a classic case of where a piece of footpath would need to go in, whether it's the developer or us, but that's what I call forward planning, so that we don't end up where we've ended up today.
Did we not just hear that's going to be done?
Yeah. There's Curvin Channel and Footpath and a bit of seal winding from the new road coming out to Graham's Road, connecting back to the Tynwald Township. So that's part of that project. Yeah.
Very pleased to hear it. Thank you.
Okay, decision time. Tony, we have a couple of questions.
Yes, we do. I'm just going to flick up, sorry, that
Does council wish to reprioritise existing funding from unsubsidised roading budget to spend on new footpaths? I think, what's the answer? Yes. The Methven, Hophall and the Mackie Street are in. Were they prioritised anyway, were they? Or if they were on the top of the list anyway?
Mackie Street was the Stairway 77 down to the thermal pools. It hasn't been in there previously because it's a new one that's sort of come up, but it's one that if you want to do it, as I said, these are what we've come up with based on what's been in the list before. If you want to add things to it like that, then that's fine. We'll just come back to you with the list of what we can afford for the funding that we've got there. So,
Angus, direction?
I'll try and help you out. I suggest we do half a width from Charlesworth to Allens Road on Racecourse Road.
with gravel.
Gravel only. Half a width.
How do you mean half a width?
Well, that means that we don't get near the power poles. So we start at the inside boundary, half a width, not a full width. Full width brings you out to the power poles. Don't even go near the power poles, just half a width.
How would that work in reality, Mark?
We'll build a 1.5 metre wide unsealed footpath there if we want to do it. So yeah, we wouldn't want to go less than that. I don't think so. Yeah. So it won't be a 3 metre wide footpath. We can fit 1.5 in behind the power poles. So.
What would drop off the list? What would the
Whatever's down at the bottom, because the list that says in the priority. So we can come back to you with what difference that makes, based on this, adding the other projects in, and then just what effect that has in terms of pricing them up a bit more and things like that.
Okay, and what slips down?
Yep.
Okay.
And they'll be done the year after or the year after that. So.
Yeah, Stuart.
Yes, I wanted to know who you're going to drop off the bottom, and could we get a copy of that, please, Mark, with all those overheads on sometime, please?
So that presentation, just email it, or you probably email it to us.
No problem.
Thanks.
No problem.
Lane?
Yeah, for Medfern, I would quite like to see that shingle track going to the hot pole. I worked there last week, and there is quite a bit of people walking there during the day. So I would just like to see that, if possible, in shingle for a start. At least it's off from the road, and it's easy to walk.
And it's also 100 kilometre an hour at the stage, open road, speed limit. Yeah, so keeping them well off the road would be more safety cautious.
Yeah, when approached Waka Kotahi and saying we want to put this path down, even though it's 100 kilometre an hour, are you okay with that? And they said, well, people are using it anyway. You can see where they're walking. Having a path for them to actually walk on makes sense. So that's why they've agreed to it. So.
Yep. Okay, so reprioritise, put those three in, reprioritise, well there's two there, there's the Methven one and the Racecourse Road, and just reprioritise the others and where they lie. You'll come back with us with that. The other question was, does council wish to use further forestry reserve to fund construction of new footpaths? I think the consensus there was no. No, yep. Good. So that's all the three items. Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
So, Tony, what we've got left is?
So what we've got left was the having a conversation if there's anything through the submissions that we received last week that we considered last week. If there's anything that you would like to raise again, this is kind of your final chance to do so before we make the final amendments to the plan.
Okay, there's one that I have, and it was from Graham McDougall, a letter that came in to myself, which went at the annual plan. It was asking for, it's in the submissions we got there, it was basically asking for a community garden, and they were thinking along the lines of using some land that they thought that was unused, and being the Chinese garden. Could a community garden be set up there? If the Chinese garden is not, the Chinese settlement is not suitable, would we have any other land that could be used for a community garden if this group of people wish to proceed with it? Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question of what I had after last week. How do we take, if you get a group of people here, or someone is presenting for a council like a multicultural or for a community group, there's one person or maybe two person there, but is it the whole committee who's making the decision, or is it just that person who's sitting here? And are we checking that?
So it's slightly different than the Chinese garden, community garden.
Oh, sorry. I thought, okay, we'll leave it till later on. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. So let's deal with the McDougall submission. Angus, the McDougall submission.
Mr. Mayor, can someone please tell me how many gardens of this type, which are great, by the way, they're really great, how many we've helped set up since 2010?
In this council?
In this council area between the Rakaia, Ashburton, the hills and the sea.
I'm sure you have the answer.
I think it's about 3. They work really well for 1 year and then something happens. But the idea, Mr. Mayor, is absolutely brilliant, and one day someone will come along and it will work really, really well for 20 years.
And this,
That's my problem.
and this submission may be that one, and we won't know until it is tried and proven either way. So what they're asking for is us to make available a piece of land that they could try it on. Lane?
Yeah, I've got a question for
Steve.
this. Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to give you some additional information on this, the Ning family that actually own that piece of land that was suggested in the submission, the family is actually not keen on having fruit and veggies grown on that land. They're wanting to tell the story of their progression over the last 100 years and kept quite simple. My experiences with the community gardens, the best ones are where they, a body come together, they set up an incorporated society with a structure and a committee that runs it, and they tend to develop it from there. And there's been some very successful ones, but as Councillor Mackay also alluded, there's also been a number that have started with a good idea and have run out of steam. So my recommendation would be, if we're going to put it on council land somewhere, that a formal body come together and put a structure together and have a plan to go forward.
And hence that could be our reply back to them, is put the body together and then come back after that, once they've completed that first stage.
And if there was a desire from council for it to go on council land, we then have a formal body to work with to identify some options. But bring it back to council.
Yeah, great, makes good sense. Lane?
No, except...
Yeah. Roger?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think community gardens are an excellent idea, but the ones I've seen in the past, the enthusiasm outstrips the ability, with the greatest of respect. And I take Steve's comments about having a formal body that we can actually talk to is absolutely vital before we start.
Agreed. Okay, happy with that? Good. Lane.
If you finish with this, I want to go back to my original.
Yeah, go back to your original.
Yeah, so organisations who come here to present and ask their questions and all the things they want, do I check that who big they are, how they come up to with it? Is it the committee who makes a motion, or is it just the person itself, or how do we have to take it? I find it always really hard.
Thank you, through the chair. It's a very interesting question that we often ponder as a team. When we are, on the advice that we receive, on the advice that we give people when they're making a submission, we say, if you're making this on behalf of your group and it's gone through your minutes or whatever process you have, then the submission needs to come from that group, say Group X. And so we will take it that has been an agreed consensus of Group X. In the past, we have had multiple submissions come in from Group X's members, for example, and they all say this is Group X's submission, and they've often said very different things in slightly different ways. So we take the first submission that we receive from Group X as being the Group X submission, and then if they end up going and making multiple submissions with competing ideas, we would go back to them to clarify. But we don't go and validate to say, has this actually gone through a formal process, or has it gone through minutes, or is it a united agreed stance? We just have to trust the submission that's made as it is.
Okay, so there is no minutes taken or anything like that, or motions putting through by these organisations. Because some are really great, and you know, a lot of people in that community or in those groups, but some of them are only 1 or 2 or 3 people. I find it really hard to take it as an organisation, some of them.
It's difficult. I guess that's where we rely on your knowledge as the local representatives of the local community, that you'll have an understanding of the groups and as they wax and wane and their membership and their I guess collective power or not, and that as collective members you'll be taking that on board.
Okay, councillors, I'm not sure where you got up to the other day, but I'm looking at page 57 on the summary booklet, and it's other feedback. And I thought we might just, if you haven't done them, go quickly through those other feedback comments that are there. If we haven't done them, I don't think you did them the other day.
We did get through the whole book, but
oh, you did?
Yes, yeah, we completed the full thing, but we're happy to go back and
No, if you've done it, that's fine. And even though the community meetings where there were questions raised there, we've gone through them?
Yes, we did.
Oh, well, that's good. We've addressed all those submitters and thought about it. Well done, Liz. Well, I think Tony, then that's sort of getting us to the final stage, is it
That
not?
is. Thank you. So from here, we will go away and make the changes to the document. We have a workshop scheduled for the 15th of June, and my intention is to bring you the draft or the final annual plan, and that's where you can have a look and a read and a review and say, okay, yes, we agree to all of that in advance of adopting it on the 29th of June.
Yeah. Just on that meeting date, what opportunity do councillors have of changing anything in that plan then?
Effectively zero.
Thank you. So, yeah, so you're hearing that? The changes would have happened all the way through up to now, and on the 15th, that will be the final, unless there is something totally flawed, which I think there would not be. It would be basically it. Stuart?
You still don't have to vote in favour of it. When I first got on, I totally opposed one annual plan and voted against it.
Everyone has that decision on when it's adopted on the 30th of June. I think that's the date we're meeting, or whatever, 29th. Yeah, you vote if you're happy for it or you're not. It's your decision. Yeah. So if that's everything, thank you all very much for your contributions. Staff done a lot of work to get to this stage, but I think we're got where we need to be. So thanks very much, and we'll call, that'll be the end. Still got another one to go, so we'll adjourn till the next, the 15th of June. Thank you.